The movie begins with a man telling someone not to look for him. We quickly learn he occupies a confession booth, giving a photo to a priest. The priest is Father Brennan, saying someone in the photo looks very human. The other man says she wasn't conceived naturally. It gets revealed a volunteer was found who was devoted. We see a woman lying somewhere with her head covered. The man with Brennan says the baby in the photo will be in her teenage years now. Certain unspecified people are waiting until she is old enough. Brennan is curious to know what she is old enough for. The woman with the cover pleads not to have something touch her again. We learn the man with Brennan is also a priest, but he no longer occupies the booth. Thus, Brennan rushes out of the church and finds the priest he was talking to, Father Harris, walking away. The former says hiding won't absolve his sins. Harris turns around to ask Brennan if he thinks Harris wants to be forgiven. He directs himself at the younger priest to say he just wants it all to be over. Soon Brennan notices shards of stained glass falling from above because the church is being worked on. He takes cover whilst Harris does not. He continues to walk away and turns back to look at Brennan. We see a big gash in the back of his head. The scene changes drastically to show Rome in 1971. The main character, Margaret, walks inside an airport where she is found by a priest. He is Father Gabriel, informing her that Cardinal Lawrence sent him for her. He says he heard a lot about Margaret and he feels like he already knows her. In a short time, a cardinal holds out his arms, saying he is very happy to see her. He is Lawrence, giving Margaret more kind words. As they ride in a car, he says when she was little, he knew she was destined for great things. They start to pass through protesters. Lawrence informs her they are rejecting authority, even the church. He hopes Margaret will play her part to help earn back their trust. The young lady says she will try. Arriving at their destination, they are greeted kindly by Sister Silva, the abbess. She takes Margaret inside the orphanage to give her a tour. Silva says they take care of only girls, and there are 62 of them. They meet Sister Angelica on the stairs. Silva says Angelica grew up there. She was abandoned on their front steps. Once Margaret says all the children seem very happy, they hear one of them scream. Silva goes to check on what is going on, leaving the newcomer alone. Margaret looks at drawings on the wall, and a certain drawing takes her interest. It was created by Carlita Siana. Hearing someone sing behind a door, Margaret enters that room. She sees a teenage girl sitting on the floor near her bed, looking at Margaret. She tells the girl Ave Maria is her favorite too. Margaret asks for her name, but doesn't receive an answer. Instead, the girl crawls to her and grabs Margaret's head to lick it. Of course, this strange behavior troubles Margaret. At this moment, Silva arrives, asking the girl if she has been behaving. She calls her Carlita. Margaret asks the girl if she drew the drawing she looked at on the wall. "It's a nice drawing," she adds. Since she complimented it, Carlita gives her another drawing. Silva considers it appropriate for them to leave Carlita alone. Outside, Margaret asks Silva why the girl is kept alone like that. She gets told Carlita hurt a child yesterday. Silva shows the newcomer a driver and says Rome has become dangerous with the protests. At night, Margaret is elsewhere. There she looks at the drawing Carlita gave her. It seems somewhat dark. While she is praying, she hears a woman behind the door say that Margaret is one of their worst behaved children. Another woman asks what if she has another episode. She gets told that Margaret should get tied to the bed. As she is looking at her habit, she soon sees it turn into a nun who screams. The talking behind the door and the nun were both Margaret's hallucinations. Following this, another young lady enters the flat. Margaret comes out to greet her, who says she is Luz. She asks Margaret how she ended up in Italy to take her veil. She tells Luz that Lawrence was a priest in the orphanage she grew up in, and they got rather close because Margaret was somewhat of a problem child. She used to have an active imagination, being convinced that what she was seeing was real. The nuns had to subdue her. When Lawrence arrived, he helped her see all the perceptions were just imaginings. Luz's story is that she heard a voice at age 16. She was kicked out of the house into the cold without knowing what to do. Fortunately, a warm wind came her way, and suddenly God's voice was all around her. He told Luz it didn't matter if she had no home, for her true home was with him. For the first time in her life, she felt like she belonged on this earth. Margaret listens to her story with teary eyes. On the next day, she is at the orphanage, speaking to the children in Italian. They are mostly teaching her the language. She notices Carlita in the back, not being as happy as the younger girls. At night, she peeks into a room and sees a girl getting restrained to the bed. The nuns see Margaret peeking, making them shut the door. She sees another nun peeking at her in the hallway while laughing. Oddly, her laughter turns to tears in no time. Luz interrupts this moment by startling Margaret from behind. She says she has something to show her new friend. The next scene has Margaret looking almost the opposite of a novitiate, which is what she is. Once Luz sees her, she says she looks gorgeous. We see Margaret is uncomfortable with how seductive she looks. She tells Luz she can't do this. This prompts her friend to hold her and tell Margaret she is very pretty. Luz thinks she has to understand what she is giving up. Afterward, the novitiates enter a nightclub. They get approached by two guys at the bar. The one talking is Alfonso, whilst his friend is Paolo. Soon Margaret watches how Luz dances with Alfonso. Turning to Paolo, she asks if she can consume his drink. In a short time, they are talking a lot more with each other. Paolo asks her what she does and she seems uncomfortable to answer, but she does tell him in Italian. Her response seems to make him want to dance. As he does, he wants her to join him. When she does, they start to get intimate on the dance floor. Out of nowhere, a blackout occurs. Margaret wakes up in her bed with her hair all over the place. Coming to Luz, she gets asked if she had fun last night. Margaret wants to know if she embarrassed herself, and Luz says she did not. She found Margaret before anything got out of control. She also says it wasn't easy to pull Margaret away from him. We see our heroine feeling bad on the floor alone. The scene shifts to her praying in a church, where she is being watched by Brennan. While she sits outside, he draws close to ask if he could sit with her. He tells her who he is, and that this will merely take a few minutes. Brennan starts by saying he knows who she is, along with where she works. This surprises her. His purpose for speaking to her has to do with Carlita. The priest warns her to be very careful, because bad things will start to happen around Carlita. Feeling unsettled, Margaret starts to leave. But he holds her to say he wants the young lady to see him tonight, at an address he gives her. There, he will tell her everything. Later, Margaret asks the girls at the orphanage where Carlita is. One of them answers that she is in the bad room. This prompts Margaret to visit Silva and inform her where Carlita is. Silva replies that the girl bit a nun this morning, so being in the bad room is her punishment. Margaret is confused regarding why there is such a room. She is given the simple answer, that some girls are bad. In the room, we see Carlita scribbling something on the floor. Once the door opens, she covers it with the rug. Margaret walks in with Silva, and the former says the room is suffocating. What they do isn't always pleasant, says Silva. However, it is done in the name of God. In the next scene, Margaret walks with Carlita, asking her if she wants to say why she was put in the room. Carlita tells her she is bad, which makes Margaret say she was bad too. Yet she realized she was not. She wants Carlita to know she gets told such a thing due to her not doing what is wanted of her. Margaret used to think something was very wrong with her. Although she tried to run away, it didn't fix the feeling. She thinks Carlita feels the same way she felt. A scream interrupts their time together. Margaret runs to see what is going on. She gets behind a window to witness a lady getting restrained for what looks like childbirth. She starts to shake violently, and soon Margaret sees a grotesque hand emerging from the lady. This sight causes Margaret to faint. At a different time, she sits awake, being inspected by a nurse. When she walks with Lawrence, she apologizes for what happened. The cardinal says she's not the first to faint from witnessing childbirth. He's surprised it doesn't happen more often. Moving along, Margaret approaches Carlita and Angelica sitting together. The nun gives Carlita's drawing to Margaret. She points to the baby in the stomach, saying she added it. Margaret says she doesn't think it is appropriate. These words prompt Angelica to lose her smile before she crumples the drawing. She kisses the newcomer and walks away. Some of the young girls take Margaret along with Carlita to play with them. Finished with their game, they lie down. Margaret sees Carlita looking above, which piques her curiosity concerning what it is. She learns it is Angelica, who whispers to Carlita that it is all for her. She lights a match, setting her. This grisly sight terrifies everyone. At night, Margaret meets Father Brennan at the location he told her about. He can tell something bad happened because of her expression. She informs him of the dreadful incident. He takes out the photo we saw at the start of the film to say the priest in it is Spoleto, who Brennan says is a radical. He thinks the baby in the photo is Carlita. Afterward, he tells his guest that two churches exist. The first is the one that follows the teachings of Christ, and the second is the church that will turn a blind eye to evil things like torture and violation. Brennan asks her if she knows what the second church is most scared of. She thinks it's the devil, but he says it's secularism. People are turning away from the church in droves. Since belief is power, he asks how people who no longer believe get controlled. He answers for her by saying, one creates something to fear. Brennan wants her to understand the church has maintained power for thousands of years and will stop at nothing to keep it that way. A small, powerful group of clergymen decided something drastic had to be done. They think they can birth the Antichrist along with controlling him. They will allow him to bring his dark forces to bear on the world just enough to drive people back to the church. Margaret calls this insane. She asks what this has to do with Carlita. Brennan thinks the baby in the photo is the mother. Once she asks the mother of what, he looks at her in a way that makes her guess she will be the mother of the Antichrist. What else can our heroine do except to call him crazy? He says if he is correct, Carlita would have been born on the 6th day of the 6th month at 6 in the morning. It is the mark of the devil that Carlita will have on her body. Brennan is certain her files are being locked away at the orphanage, and he needs Margaret to get them to him. He needs to know how she was born. He tells her something unbelievable, that they are mating a jackal. It is the father. At this point, Margaret tries to leave due to the absurdity of the information she is receiving, but he puts his hands on her to say the evil inside Carlita will do whatever it takes to stop them. He wants her to know they must destroy it at all costs. It is almost June 6th, and he needs her help. Margaret replies she can't help him. She wants him to let go of her so she can leave. Later, she is riding a bus, sitting beside Father Gabriel. She asks him if he knows anything about Carlita's history. Since he doesn't, she asks where she could find such information. Alas, she learns this is not his area. After the bus ride, Margaret walks with Carlita. We see protesters in the distance. Elsewhere, the novitiate asks Carlita if anyone has done anything to her that might have scared or upset the girl. Interestingly, she doesn't know and says sometimes she gets bad feelings. She sees things that she cannot tell if they are real or not. To comfort her, Margaret says when she was younger, she used to have horrible visions she thought were real. Yet she learned those thoughts were lies. Carlita tells her what she has isn't a lie before she walks away upset. Margaret follows her and finds her crying. A statue is covering another person who sits with her. All Margaret sees is a hand touching Carlita's back. She moves to see who the person is to see it is none other than Angelica with a bloody face. At this moment, Silva startles Margaret from behind. She has news of a riot having started, meaning they must go instantly. Now Margaret sees Carlita is sitting alone. Leaving the building, they cautiously run outside. The angry people flip a car over and set it on fire. Margaret loses Carlita in the riot's chaos. She struggles to move and soon gets touched by a grotesque hand. The chaos makes her lose her mind momentarily. Later, she occupies Silva's office in the orphanage. Silva says she along with Lawrence are concerned for Margaret. They think she has to have her vows postponed. They are also concerned about her attachment to Carlita. Silva thinks maybe her being around the girl is not what is right because she had a similar childhood. As Silva keeps talking, Margaret hears loud whispers. She says she is the sole person who is worried about Carlita. Once Silva says the girl is mentally sick, Margaret fires back that it is Silva's fault. Such words confirm to the abbess that Margaret is unwell. Silva lets her know that she will stay away from Carlita, or there will be consequences. The next scene has Margaret riding in the car with her driver. She sees a certain man walking and orders her driver to stop. She walks after the guy she met at the nightclub, Paolo, while calling to him. Seeing her, he keeps walking. He also apologizes for something and says he didn't know. Margaret is curious to know what he means, but he yells for her to stop following him. He tells her to look for the mark before he gets struck by a car. She finds him alive, sandwiched between the vehicle and a wall. When Margaret removes Paolo, she quickly realizes she is holding only his top half. At a different time, we see her praying in a troubled state. It keeps her awake during bedtime. For an unknown reason, many white spiders separate this scene from the next. It is the scene of Luz's initiation ceremony. She kneels to Cardinal Lawrence, who bestows a prayer on her. A ring gets placed on her finger. Soon, Margaret rushes out of it to enter a room. She searches for something in the drawers of a desk with a determined mind until she finds a key under it. She notices the wallpaper is uneven, so she starts to look for something on it. Finding a hole, Margaret inserts the key in there. It opens a hidden door to a dark passageway that leads down. She eventually reaches the bottom, where a cabinet exists for her to look through. She finds a file on Carlita in it. The file states Carlita was born on June 6th, exactly at 6 in the morning. A special note states that she must be kept away from the other girls. Switching to Luz, she lies on the floor as a nun, with her arms extended. The other nuns join her, and they all start to whisper unintelligibly. Margaret finds other files of girls being born with Carlita's family name. She learns the unsettling truth that they were all stillborn. They came into this world on June 6th, at exactly 6 in the morning. Margaret leaves the hidden place with the files. She finds Carlita and wants the girl to come with her. A problem arises with her seeing several nuns looking at her. Thus, Margaret runs to a room with Carlita. She sincerely apologizes to the girl for not having believed her, but she believes her now. Once the nuns break through the door, they bring Margaret down. She sees them take Carlita, who screams in fear. Margaret sees the number 6666 on the inside of Carlita's mouth during her scream. As punishment, the nuns drag Margaret into the bedroom. She lies on the shabby bed there and hears whispers. Soon, she removes the rug on the floor, revealing the drawing that perhaps Carlita drew. Looking at it gives Margaret disturbing images. She has to tell herself it's not real several times due to the fear the images create. Amid her repetition of this comforting phrase, she hears someone ask what is not real. Margaret instantly wants to know who said this. She sees someone sitting in the dark corner. The person is a lady who stands and walks to Margaret. She happens to be a burnt Angelica, lightly laughing. The moment she screams, Margaret screams with her in fear. This causes Gabriel to enter the room. He tells Margaret, who is alone in the room, that they have to go. He found the files and assures her no one came with him. In the next scene, they both arrive at Brennan's place. The man is impressed that Margaret found the files. When she asks whether he and Gabriel know each other, they give opposing answers. Brennan is the one to say, yes. Gabriel adjusts his answer to say Brennan tried to approach him. He thought the man was crazy. Brennan says it won't be long until the clergy will realize they lost their files. Once they do, they will come for the trio. Brennan thinks the sole path forward is for this group to prove what the evil clergy has done. Later, they are all busy looking through the files, and Brennan says the church needs a male. Only females have been birthed, and they all perished except for Carlita. Brennan says the clergy believes the only way is for the beast to mate with its offspring. Looking at the photo Brennan has, Margaret points to the mark on the baby's head. She says Carlita does not have that mark on her head. It is inside her mouth. Margaret stresses the baby in the photo is not Carlita. She says they need to look through the files again because they missed something. Margaret finds a file with no photo, so she attaches the photo Brennan has to it, and it is the one. She thinks there was another survivor. She remembers how Paolo told her to look for the mark. Since he pointed to his head as he said it, she realizes he knew where the mark was. At this moment, Margaret remembers what happened after the blackout at the nightclub. She lies somewhere, surrounded by people with robes. Paolo is among them, looking scared. Her head gets covered, and we learn she is the lady at the start of the film. Soon, a grotesque hand touches her. Once something gets on top of her that she cannot see, she screams in disturbed fear in the present. Brennan tries to calm her. He also says he needs to inspect her head. Doing that, he finds the 666 birthmark. He starts to say that Carlita must be too young, so they brought Margaret back to Rome. But he doesn't finish his sentence. He does not need to, for she realizes what he means and tries to leave. Brennan tries to stop her, prompting Margaret to threaten to take his life. He says nothing will change if she tries to leave. It is midnight on June 6th, meaning the evil clergy will come for her. She says if it is true that she is pregnant, she needs the baby out of her now. The next scene has them riding to a doctor. Margaret feels bad and soon vomits. At this unfortunate moment, a car slams into theirs from the side. Margaret is the single person to get out of the car. She shakes while standing. When the shaking becomes severe, we see a car with the clergy arriving to park nearby. Margaret gets on the ground for the liquid to spill out of her. Her stomach becomes large in seconds. The clergy draws close to her, and she experiences another blackout. Waking up elsewhere, Margaret panics. Lawrence is beside her to promise that it will all be over in a short time. He assures her he won't let anything bad happen. Furthermore, he says the baby she is about to bear will redeem the church. It will bring people back to God. Lawrence believes God chose her for this task. After she gets injected, he wants her to know he loves her. Her stomach gets exposed, and a doctor uses a scalpel to cut it. Many people in robes stand in the darkness to witness this gruesome act. Once the placenta gets taken out, the doctor cuts it to reveal that our heroine gave birth to twins. He is proud to announce one of them is a boy. Silva is the first to hold him. Margaret asks if she can hold her baby. Thus, Silva gives the new mother what she wants. Lawrence comes to her and she stabs him in the neck with a scalpel. Following this, Margaret gets out of the gurney with her baby. She holds the scalpel to what is believed to be the Antichrist, making Silva tell her to stop this. As Margaret struggles to commit the act she should, Silva throws herself at her. But it is Margaret's friend, Luce, who ends up stabbing the poor lady. With that, the clergy starts to leave the room, and Silva instructs someone to burn everything. We see Carlita peeking to watch them walk away. Shifting to Margaret, she lies injured in the room with fire surrounding her. She takes her daughter, who the evil clergy intended to flames with her mother. Thankfully, Carlita arrives to save them. Margaret gets to witness the burning of the beast that was used to mate with her. The scene changes to a churchman riding in a car. He looks at a photo of a man and says he is the U.S. ambassador to Rome. Giving the photo to Luce, he says the man will be the new father. He also says the man and his wife will suffer a tragic loss. They will need a child to compensate for it. The boy will inherit their power. We see that Silva and Luce in a hospital with the Antichrist baby they are about to give. The man's narration continues that the Antichrist's darkness will spread, which will bring salvation to the world. Years later, Margaret lives with Carlita, removed from civilization. Margaret's daughter is with them, now a young child. When they hear something outside, our attention is brought to Brennan walking toward their house. Margaret gives him a warm greeting from behind by pointing a shotgun at him. His first words are that he is sorry. Turning to the lady, he says he tried to leave her alone, yet she commands him to leave. He came to warn her that the evil clergy knows she is alive. They did not want them to survive, especially Margaret's daughter. The film concludes with Brennan saying her son was given the name Damien.